Welcome back, and this week we are continuing to discuss literature reviews. And today we will focus on how you can use the sources that you have found. We're continuing to work on the all-time classic, The Craft of Research by Booth, Kalam, and Williams, published by the University of Chicago Press. And in this video, we are focusing on chapter 6 in this book. So we will talk about 3 uses for sources, reading curiously but critically, preserving what you find, and also getting help. So, according to Booth, Kalam, and Williams, there are 3 uses for sources, and it is important to remember that sources not only provide evidence on our topics, but they also serve as models, really models for developing the logic of our arguments. So the 3 uses for sources that they discuss are first, reading for a problem, right? So if you do not have your research questions yet, you are still choosing a problem, you only have a topic you're interested in, then you can really search for literature on that topic and read those sources that you find, looking for a problem that you could study in your research, right? And when you read with this purpose in mind, you usually read quickly, not so thoroughly, and you really are looking for stuff that sparks your interest, that sparks your curiosity. This could be, puzzling claims that authors make, maybe they claims that you disagree with, or maybe you don't understand fully. Maybe you will notice data that authors working on your topic ignored for some reason, and other interesting things, right? Gaps in the literature, things that people didn't study and you think must be studied. They are important for this topic. So, this is a possibility if you are still looking for a research problem and research questions. Okay. The second possible use for sources that you find during your literature review hunt is really reading for an argument. And here it is important to distinguish that if you just borrow someone's argument, that's plagiarism, right? Don't do that. But what you can really borrow is the logic of an argument, right? So when you're reading for an argument, you're really searching for the logic, the model of how a research argument is constructed and how it is developed, and you can borrow some nice ideas from there. Okay, to read for an argument, to read for to learn how to build a solid research argument, you will have to read very carefully, and really here you have to understand everything that a particular author whose logic of an argument you like, what that author has written, and also everything that you need to know in order to understand what you read in the paper. Okay, so this is a very labor-intensive process, but really it can develop your research skills and research writing skills also. So another advice that you could try when reading for an argument is when you read carefully the paper or a book that whose logic of an argument you wanna analyze and maybe borrow potentially, you could turn each major point that the authors make into a question or an answer that really helps you to process the logic of their arguments. Okay, and the third use of sources, this is really the most common. This is what the majority of researchers do, is read for evidence, right? So we read various sources in order to find evidence, data that we could use as evidence to support our own claims, okay, our own claims, our own arguments in the papers or books that we write. So here, what's important is to locate original sources, make sure that what you're reading is really usable as evidence, and a very common error in when reading for evidence is take a claim as if it's a fact, right? So please be sure to distinguish a claim that an author makes from an actual fact. All right. So do the Booth, Column, and Williams recommend us to read the sources that we find, right? So we are very lucky. We found relevant, reliable, and important sources on our research questions. So what do we do with them? Okay, so first you have to read in order to understand those sources fully. Um, Take it slowly, read it slowly, if necessary, reread. And here, the assumption that we would like to recommend is read assuming that you do not understand what you're reading well enough, right? At this point, don't try to disagree. I mean, you could if it goes naturally, but you don't have to take this mindset or an assumption that you have to disagree at this point, okay? In order to disagree, you really need to understand what you're reading, right? So the next step, once you understand the source, uh, you are totally free to disagree with it, right? And one thing that is really puzzling or baffling for beginner researchers is that they might see that one article completely disagrees with another article, and some people even start to think, hey, all this research stuff is just, it's just useless because there is so much disagreement, and it's really, we don't know what's right or wrong. Well, that is not a correct conclusion, right? So there is a big difference of informed debate when experts disagree with each other based on certain things which are it could be research aspects like methodology, the use of data, other things, right? Analytic procedures, other reliability, generalizability of findings, and other things. And that is it's a completely different thing from just an uninformed opinion fight, right? So rarely do not think that if researchers disagree, if authors disagree with each other, that's kind of just opinions, right? This shouldn't downgrade research in your eyes to just opinions. It's not, right? Most often, if you are reading quality, reliable sources, then you will benefit from reading sources that disagree with each other, and you have to try to understand why they disagree. Okay, what's the basis for their disagreement? And next thing, after you disagree, a source that you fully understand, you want to do is you want to check important stuff for accuracy, right? So check if the paper reports other things correctly, whether the summaries are careful, whether the criticism of other published papers and books is really based on expertise, that is not ignorant in other things, right? You have to make sure that really the claim or the argument of what you're reading is based on solid evidence. Okay, and really the final tip here is if you couldn't find anything but tertiary sources on your topic, be very critical, be even more careful when using them, when reading and summarizing them for your literature review. After you when you are after you found your sources and you started reading them, the advice that we give is really to start recording, making and taking good records. So first, be sure to record your sources accurately. These days, there are many software solutions that allow you to keep your bibliographic references in a very convenient and very usable manner, such as EndNote, Mendeley, citation software. If you don't have access to those, be sure to record your sources very, very accurately and develop some sort of a system where you can find all your records, and use them when you need them. And in addition to keeping your exact bibliographic references, be sure to take detailed notes on them. Really, those notes should be full and accurate. They should contain the complete bibliographic data. And the book recommends to maybe use cards. I don't know. I personally don't use cards. I used to use them like maybe 10 years ago in when I was a student, but these days I find that just taking notes in a on a computer, maybe on in a Google document, is much better because eventually I'll have to turn those notes into a written text, right? So it's easier for me just to do it once, have my notes, and then use them to create my first draft instead of having my notes manually written on cards, right? But if you love handwriting stuff, it's okay, I guess. Use whatever works for you. I personally prefer taking notes on every research project in a separate Google Doc or just a Word document. In those notes, be sure to have accurate quotes, right? You will want to have those some quotes, some magnificently worded pieces of the original text. Be sure to add the pages and where you got them from, and be sure to have some system for those quotes in order not to mix them with other things that you take notes of, right? So I usually put them in inverted commas, and I add the page I got that from, right? Then it's useful to have paraphrases. Develop some system for paraphrasing stuff, right? You want to when reading something, you might want to use some things, and I personally do them. I do the paraphrasing in a way that I will, I write it in sentences that could later be used in my first draft. Okay, I find that saves a lot of time. So summaries, same thing. If you want to summarize the paper or a book, then I recommended doing it as if you are already writing your paper. Okay, so that really focuses your writing, and your thoughts, and that also always reminds you about your purpose, your goal, right? And kind of allows you to do focused reading and note taking. Okay, and I also do that, and the book recommends writing down your own thoughts. Okay, and be sure not to confuse those things that your thoughts, notes about your thoughts from notes about what the author said of the source you're reading or taking and analyzing, right? So I personally after summarizing, paraphrasing, quoting everything from a source that I care about, I add like a separate paragraph which begins with my name. I write my name, and then I write everything that I think about it, right? I do that in a very informal language, like I think blah blah blah, I disagree with that, as if I'm talking to a friend or to a non-expert. I find that it is super useful. After a while, when you return to your notes, it is very, very useful to read your own thoughts. Sometimes that they will surprise you, but most often they will really help you develop your research argument and write your first draft. So another thing that the craft of research recommends is to really get the context right. Yeah. So when you are quoting or summarizing a source that you're reading, you have to really be careful about the context around the conclusions and arguments that support them. So often, especially in the social sciences, conclusions and arguments are really context dependent. Okay, be careful with that. Another thing is pay attention to the rhetorical importance of the claims. Sometimes is the thing that you are writing down, uh, was it a main point in the paper, or maybe it was something, like more of a side note, right? So those things are important because yeah, you could really be paying attention to something that the author didn't intend to make his or her main argument. Okay. Also, pay attention to the author's scope and confidence when they are um, the way they word their claim or argument. Also, be careful. Sometimes beginner researchers confuse summaries that an author makes with the author's actual views, okay? And sometimes those summaries could actually contradict the author's views. So be careful with that. Um, Also, if you find sources agreeing on some major argument, yeah, uh, do check whether they also agree on the interpretations and in the kind of evidence or in the types of support that they use for their claim, right? So it could be that even though they agree on something, on a major conclusion, right, their data or analysis or the kind of data or the quality of data are completely different. So maybe one of the sources isn't as reliable as you would imagine. Okay. And finally, be sure to identify causes of disagreement if you find contradicting sources, right? Is it methodology? Is it the quality of data? Is it the internal validity? Is it external validity? What is it? Is it positionality? Is it or is it other things, right? So be sure when you just find when you find sources that disagree with each other, instead of just stating the fact of this disagreement, uh, analytically really evaluate what is the reason why they disagree. Okay, and really there is no better advice in analyzing and note taking for literature reviews except for checking and rechecking. Be careful in your notes. Really organize them very well, have them clean and neat, because even though you understood things correctly, you analyzed them correctly, if you write up your notes, carelessly somehow, in a confusing manner, this might lead, to errors later when you write up your first draft. Well, let's talk about getting help. Of course, you are if you reach the stage once you reach the stage where you are reading all you found and you are organizing and summarizing everything in writing, right? You can still be confused, overwhelmed by the amount of sources that you have to read and analyze, right? So what can you do? Well, first, keep asking yourself, what problem am I posing here? What question am I asking here? Keep your eyes on the prize. Really, always do focused reading and analysis. Okay. If still confused, it's a good strategy to ask friends, classmates, or teachers, really anybody who is sympathetic but quite critical enough. Okay. When telling them about what you do, about your literature review, tell them what you found. Describe, the main arguments out there on your topic, right? And after you explain those things, ask your audience, your sympathetic and critical audience, does this make sense? Am I missing an important aspect or a question? Right? Or given what I have said, what else would you like to know? Right? Really practice explaining your ideas to non specialists. This makes it works miracles, and it's beneficial even just speaking out, trying to explain those, even if they don't give you any feedback, just explaining your ideas to non-specialists, helps you clarify your thoughts and eventually write better. Thanks for watching. See you later.